This evening's video is brought to you by Ms. Rickfelder, that's me, and we're going to be working on modeling division of fractions. So we're going to be looking at fractions divided by other fractions, fractions divided by whole numbers, and fractions with unlike denominators divided by other fractions. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The first problem that you see here is 4/5 divided by 2/5. And I do want you to write the notes that you see here in your composition notebook. It does say dividing fractions using models. This first example is going to be using the same denominator. So for this particular problem, we're just going to need to use one bar. And the first thing that we need to do, our first step is always the same. We need to draw a whole unit. So this bar represents our whole unit. So that first step is to draw a bar to show one whole. So that's what our bar up here is showing. The second step is going to be to use the denominator. So the denominator in our first fraction is 5. So that means we need to split this bar into 5 pieces. So now I've written right here in red is split the bar into the number of pieces of the denominator of the start with fraction. Now I use that start with word, the two words there, because I know that you're going to be using these models and diagrams when you're working out word problems. So one of the most important things that you can do with the word problem, as I've taught you in class, is you need to always find out what you're starting with. That's the hardest part, is to find out what you're starting with and make sure that number goes first. So we're going to look right here and we see that the denominator in our start with fraction is 5. So we're going to split our bar into 5 pieces. And remember, just a side note, whenever you're splitting the bar into 5s, like if you need 5 chunks, then you only need 4 lines. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So those are relatively the same size. And now you can just double check too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, we have 5 pieces. All right, and so unlike when we're using 2 bars to model division of fractions, we're just using the 1. So the first thing that we're going to do is look at the 4/5 that we actually have. So I'm going to go ahead and cross out this 5/5. So because remember, we're only starting with really that 4/5. So that shows you the 4/5 right here. All right, so again, we crossed out the part of the fraction that isn't part of the problem. And so that one green X right there is showing us that we never had that 5th to begin with. So now our last piece is going to be to circle groups of 2 because that's our numerator in our division fraction. Because we want to find out how many groups of 2/5 are in 4/5. So now we need to circle groups of 2. So now we're going to go, okay, we have one group of 2. And we have another group of 2. And remember, this is 2/5 because this is a 5th, 1/5, and this is a 5th. So that gives you your 2/5. That's one group. And then we have another 5th here and another 5th here. So this is another group of 2/5. So how many groups of 2/5 do we have? We actually have 2. So we're going to write our answer as equals 2, and just like you're always supposed to do, we're going to now check the model and make sure that our work is correct. So we're going to do our keep flip change. So we have 4/5, and we're going to flip that to 5/2, and then we're going to change division to multiplication. Now we're going to go ahead and cross simplify. We get a 1 here and a 2 here because we're dividing out 2 from both of those. And we can cross simplify our 5s. So we get a 1 here and a 1 here because we're dividing out 5 from both of those. So now what we're left with is 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 1 is 1, and our final answer is in fact 2. So now we've checked it with multiplication as well. So there you have it. That's going to be my short video in dividing fractions using models. And this is dividing fractions with the same denominator. So now we're going to go ahead and look at dividing fractions using models when you have different denominators. So you have 8/10 and we want to divide that into 2/5. So just like before, we're going to go ahead and look at that 10. So I'm going to circle the 10 here. And we're going to use that 10 to split our bar up here into 10ths. All right, so now you can see I've separated this into 10 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, perfect. Now before we can work with this, we need to change the denominator in 2/5 to be 10. So let's go ahead and just basically we're going to make the fraction larger. So we're going to look now at 8/10 and 2/5. So now right next to this 2/5, I'm just going to go ahead and write 10ths there. And sorry about that. Let me make it a little neater. And then we need to ask ourselves, how do I get from 5 to 10? Well, I multiplied by 2. And then whatever I do on the top, or whatever I did on the bottom, I'm going to do it on the top as well. So 2 times 2 is 4. And what we've done here is we've just created an equivalent, hang on one second. So now that we have an equivalent fraction of 4/10, now we're looking for groups of 4 out of the tenths. But remember, first we're only dealing with 8/10, so you want to first go ahead and cross out the two sections that were never part of the problem to begin with. So these guys are not part of our problem anymore. So now we're going to look at what we have left, so cross all that out, no longer here. And we're going to look at what we have left, and we're going to go ahead and circle groups of 4, because remember, the 4 are right there. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that worked out nicely. We have 2 whole groups of 4. So that means the answer to our problem, 8/10 divided by 2/5, should be 2. And just like before, we want to go ahead and use multiplication to check to make sure that our modeling was right. And I listed the steps here down here on the bottom. So now let's go ahead and check with multiplication. We have 8/10 times 5 over 2. We can cross simplify the 5 and the 10. We get 1 and 2. And we can cross simplify the 2 and the 8. We're dividing 2 out of both of those, so we should get 4 on top. And then we end up with 4 times 1 is 4, and 2 times 1 is 2, and 4 divided by 2 leaves us with our whole number of 2. So our model was correct, and we can verify that by using the keep flip change. That's all for this lesson on dividing fractions using models.